Do you know what I just realized we didn't do for this podcast? We didn't introduce ourselves or anything like that.
You don't need to know who I am. Okay, hi, I'm Phlog. I'm loud.
Cool. I'm Circeanic. I'm probably pretty quiet right now, actually.
You're gonna be listening to this later.
Yeah, it's gonna
And
be
when
like...
you're going through to edit, you're gonna be like, fuck, why are we like this? I have my notes on Wendigos.
I don't have any notes on Wendigos.
I could teach you.
Ooh, yeah, teach me.
Do you want to get learned?
Why are you trying to push get learned?
I don't know. I don't even like it. It's just because it's my idea that I'm like, well, I own it now. Okay.
I learned me up, girl. I'm on the
Okay.
Wikipedia page right now for Wendigos.
Cheater!
Oh, is that cheating? Should I just not look at anything and just like...
I don't know. Would that be considered spoilers? What words?
Would
that be spoilers?
If you don't want me to, I will just let you learn me.
Yeah, let's just learn you. Okay, so
I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
So when I say Wendigo, what do you think of?
Well, I kind of already know what a Wendigo is. Well,
that's okay.
Actually, that's not true.
You think you know it.
True. I know what a video game has told me a Wendigo is.
Okay, and I know what game that is.
Yes. It's a great game.
But no one else does.
Oh, it's Until Dawn.
There you go.
That video game told me that a Wendigo is like a person who has had to resort to cannibalism, and it's like corrupted their soul, and so they turn into this creature that I don't know if they are evil or like hostile against like trespassers. Is that what it's supposed to be? Like anyone who just like kind of goes near where they are like considered.
That seems to be the case for Until Dawn.
Yes. That is basically, I did look it up at one point, but I have completely lost that information from my brain. So this is what I know about Wendigos.
Yeah. Okay. So did you know that there's Wendigos in Stephen King's Pet Cemetery?
I did not know that.
So in Pet Cemetery, if you remember how it goes, there's like this land, right, where if you bury the dead bodies there, they'll reanimate and come back to life.
Mm-hmm.
In the book, the being or the creature, the like scary creatures that reanimate the bodies are Wendigos.
Ah.
And so like if you've seen the new adaptation of it, the newest adaptation, in there you'll hear like those screams in the background or weird sounds in the background whenever they go to like I don't know the dead zone. I don't know what it's called. Those are the Wendigos, or like Stephen King's adaptation of Wendigos for that novel. In that book, it goes a little bit deeper than it would in like the movies. In the movies, the only exposure you get are that like people come back to life and they're weird.
Weird is a word for it.
Yeah, they're a little violently weird. But in the book, the Wendigos are like the ones infecting people's minds. If you remember from the movie, the husband has these weird fever dreams about it and like thinks about it and can't get the idea of bringing back his child's life out of his head. Mm-hmm. That would be caused by the Wendigo, like infecting people's minds to be more susceptible so that they would resurrect stuff.
Interesting.
And the resurrected people would hypothetically become hosts for the Wendigos.
Oh,
and
I
that's
see.
Why they're weird.
Okay, so
they're coming back as Wendigos.
So it isn't necessarily that these people are coming back to life. It's just that these bodies are being inhabited by these spirits, essentially.
Wendigos.
Yeah.
So,
Creepy.
and
Okay.
super cool. And the reason why I bring up the Stephen King version is because I feel like that starts to tie in to actual Wendigo lore in real life. A Wendigo in media nowadays, our culture, is usually like seen as humanoid creature, usually hunched over, but like still has a very like human form, kind of like The Forest, if you've ever seen it
I have
or
not. Was
played it.
that
That's okay. It's a video game about cannibals. They all look like they're human, but they like will run around on all fours, stuff like
creepy.
that.
Oh, creepy.
That's what Wendigos typically are portrayed as. Humanistic bodies that are very, very scrawny, very skinny. You can see like hip and bones and
So that's kind of similar to Until Dawn then.
and that's because in their history, they're often closely associated with really, really cold, freezing conditions, and they come from famine, starvation, and that's how they're portrayed. There's been like real life reportings of cannibalism, including places like Minnesota. Hunters and campers in like the upper like regions say that they've seen Wendigos and shit.
Because Minnesota gets a fuck ton of snow.
Wendigos came from a few different regions. Like there's different areas of the world that have come up with Wendigos, which kind of builds into like maybe it's true, maybe they're real, because it's from all over. In Algonquin folklore, Wendigo is like a man-eating spirit or like demonic entity that lives in the northern forests of the Atlantic coast and the Great Lakes region of both the US and Canada. Canada's got Wendigos.
So they're local.
They're local, yeah. Do you think the Canadian Wendigos have like different tastes than the US Wendigos? Do you think the US Wendigos are fatter?
Like poll all the different Wendigos and see what their tastes are
Yeah.
like. Maybe Canadian Wendigos only eat American tourists.
Well, I'm thinking like the Canadian ones, you know, when they kill someone, that they like tap into a tree for sap and then like put the sap on the body before they eat it.
Ooh, or maybe that's how they like store them. They wrap them in
In maple.
crystallized maple syrup. And then when they're ready to eat, they just chip it away, you know?
Like weird spiders.
I don't know. That just came to my brain, so I said it.
So Wendigos are a part, like traditionally, they're a part of the belief system of Algonquin people, namely, I'm going to butcher these, namely the Ojibwa, Cree, and Innu. Yep, nailed it. Okay, so while some of the descriptions between them vary, the themes between all three people that, you know, come up with these traditions are that they're cannibalistic, supernatural creatures associated with like winter and freezing, famine, starvation, stuff like that. But in Eastern lore, Wendigos are described much larger than human beings, and whenever a Wendigo ate another human person, it would always grow in proportion to the meal size that it had eaten, so it could never be full. Therefore, it would always be in starvation mode and always be like greedy for food. If it ate like a 150-pound dude, it would grow another like 150 pound dude. It would grow in that size. It would have to like go find another meal and then go find another one and go find another one.
Right, because
But
it
then
just
would
keeps
keep
growing. Yeah. I'm assuming the meals are all people, though.
Yeah, they're not like vegan. What about vegan Wendigos?
I don't think that would be possible. What would they eat?
It's the only diet that's possibly vegan, because if you get your 200 IQ Wendigo to stroll up, entice some humans, and or like humans that are maybe just done with their life, those humans can consent to them eating.
Yeah, but I mean, technically.
And veganism is about consent. Animals can't consent, and so like you're eating their stuff without their consent, but humans consent. So like if we're on like a hiking trip and we're just not gonna make it and only one of us can survive, or like you need to cut off part of my body and eat it or something, then like I can like consent you to eat my forearm.
Yeah.
And that forearm meat would then be consensual meat, which would then be vegan meat. So then there's been like other traditions where humans that have become like overpowered with greed, wanting things, needing things, like really aggressively getting greedy, would turn into Wendigos in addition to eating human meat in cannibalistic or like in high stress situations. So let's say you climb a mountain, right? Like we were talking about earlier, except for this meat's not vegan. We're climbing and we don't know that we're gonna make it. We don't know what we're gonna do. The person would get like greedy with wanting to live, and they would attack that other person and eat that meat out of like greed and fear and stress, and that person would become a Wendigo. Whereas maybe if it was consensual vegan meat,
Yes.
then you might not turn into a Wendigo. One more lore, and then I can go into like some stories.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I got stories for you, Beach. So the last lore is that there's a ceremonial dance performed called something really long that I can't pronounce, but it's like Wendigukazimoen,
Okay.
something like that. And it's performed in times of famine. Usually they wear like masks and dance backwards around a drum. And it's supposed to like basically ward off like famine, ward off Wendigos, like stuff like that. And the last known ceremony conducted was in the U.S. at Lake Wendigo in northern Minnesota.
Wait, does it say what year they did it? Like, was it recently that they did this, or was it like...
Oh, I don't know. We'll have to find out. I would love to talk to like, there has to be a professional Wendigo knower. Like, I'm sure that's not their job title, but someone that like studies Wendigos and stuff.
Someone affiliated with the History Channel might know.
Okay, so story time.
I'm ready. I got my blanket.
This is gonna be weird. I'm gonna read a very long section of something to you.
Okay.
So this is an excerpt from the Jesuit Relations, which is Chronicles of the Jesuit Missions in New France, and it's written by missionaries reporting to Quebec or Montreal as an account of their activities between 1632 and 1673. It's supposed to be like real, like something real that happened,
Okay.
like a real story.
Ooh, okay. I'm ready. I'm ready.
So this one is based in 1661. They are afflicted with neither lunacy, hypochondria, nor frenzy, but have the combination of all these species of diseases, which affects their imaginations and causes them a more than canine hunger. This makes them so ravenous for human flesh that they pounce upon women, children, and even upon men, like veritable werewolves, and devour voraciously, without being able to appease or glut their appetite, ever seeking fresh prey. The more greedily, the more they eat. This ailment attacked our deputies, and, as death is the sole remedy among those simple people for checking such acts of murder, they were slain in order to stay the course of their madness. So that's the end of that excerpt.
Damn.
So basically, people just started to ravenously eat their deputies and like did it like they were ravenous dogs, basically jumping on them. Fucking ate them.
Holy fuck.
And so obviously they killed them, and it sounds like they also killed anyone that was like bitten by one.
Damn, that almost kind of sounds a little zombie-like then, too.
Yeah, right? So then during the winter of 1878, so this is a couple like 100 years later. The other one was 1661. This is 1876.
Okay.
A trapper from Alberta,
Ooh.
Canada represent, named Swift Runner, and his family were starving to the point that his oldest son died. They were 25 miles away from like emergency food supplies. So Swift Runner became overwhelmed with the need to eat and butchered his wife and his 5 remaining children. He killed them all and then ate them all.
Jesus.
And then because he resorted to cannibalism and because he consumed everybody that was present, it said that it wasn't just pure cannibalism as a last resort, and that he probably got this disease or disorder that was called Wendigo psychosis. So he later confessed that the Wendigo psychosis and was executed at Fort Saskatchewan.
Damn, son.
Yeah.
I mean, there was Wendigo in the title of whatever it was that he had, which basically makes him
A Wendigo. Yeah. Another well-known case involving Wendigo psychosis is from a medicine man, in quotations, Jack Fiddler, who was known for powers of defeating Wendigos. So in some cases, he would like slaughter individuals who had Wendigo psychosis or who had been like confirmed to have Wendigo psychosis. Mm-hmm. And he ended up killing about 14 people. According to him, all of the victims had either transformed into a Wendigo, so I guess changed the way they looked, mm-hmm. or were on the verge of doing so.
I mean, there isn't really any way to know. It's not like he was handing them off to someone who was like studying their physiology or something.
Instead, he killed 14 people, and we don't know.
We don't know.
If he was just a serial killer that just used Wendigo, like psychosis, as an out for it. Mm-hmm. In 1907, so getting closer to us, him and his brother Joseph were arrested by Canadian authorities for homicide for those killings.
Damn. Okay. So they eventually did get
caught out for it. And Jack himself, who did those murders, committed suicide. His brother was tried and sentenced to life in prison.
That seems like a logical conclusion to that story then.
But there's slightly more.
Oh, shit. Oh.
Just slightly. His brother was ultimately granted a pardon, but died 3 days later in jail before actually receiving news of his pardon.
Damn, son, that's pretty ominous.
Damn.
Some kind of Wendigo spirits coming back and taking their revenge, obviously.
Yeah, right? So I have one more story for you.
Okay.
This one goes back a little bit further. So this one is 1871, a few years before Swift Runner. It's an excerpt from the personal scrapbook of Reverend Egerton R. Young, and he was a Methodist minister in 1871. Another dreadful event has occurred about 100 miles from us. A boy, about 15 years old, went crazy and in his ravings kept asking for flesh to eat. At last he said, "I will surely kill somebody and eat them if I can." One day he attacked his father and tried to bite him. The father and eldest brother of the crazy one then deliberately strangled him and burnt his body to ashes. They have a superstitious belief that unless the body of a crazy person is consumed by fire, it comes to life again, and ever after a great source of trouble and affliction to its friends.
Damn.
It seems like that boy was like maybe getting this affliction, the Wendigo psychosis, and started to crave and like really need human skin and human flesh to consume. It seems like in that area, the superstitious belief is that when you do kill somebody that has that you have to burn them so that they actually die.
Yeah, I feel like that was what was the same in Until Dawn too.
Because that guy had like a flamethrower.
Yeah, and his shotgun only like stunned them. It didn't actually like. I never actually finished playing that game myself. I just watched like a bunch of people
play it. I can't believe
it.
You've done this.
Because I hate QuickTime events. Like they stress me out.
So it kind of brings into question whether or not Wendigo psychosis is real, and whether or not Wendigo psychosis is what causes this. Like if this whole Wendigo monster is real. Because of any monsters that are out there, this could be one that's the most accurate or the most true, the most possible. Because it could just be a mental disorder.
I have no idea what disease it could be. I've been kind of like thinking about, I have no medical
rabies.
knowledge, but yeah, something like that, right? Where you're just like
human rabies, right? Like look at animals that get rabies.
Because I know that there are some diseases you can get specifically from eating certain parts of a human body. Like, I don't think there's one that you can get specifically from eating the brain, but I'm pretty sure that makes you like kind of paralyzed or something like that. So I don't know if that's what this is, but could be something also like that where it starts from cannibalism, and so that's kind of how it all
kind of begins.
Yeah.
Well, there's actually some research on Wendigo psychosis.
Oh, okay. Hit me with that research.
Bitch, don't worry, I got you some research. The thing that could be causing all of this, the thing that could be causing like this like ravenous, insane like lust for human flesh, basically, could be this Wendigo psychosis. Technically defined, it has a definition, as a mental illness that defines the sometimes uncontrollable craving to eat human flesh, even when other food is available. So it's kind of like if poutine was in my house, but I had a whole fridge full of chicken and veggies and like good other food or other food options that are good for me, or even just other food options, but I would like rather get in my car and go out of my way to go get poutine because I want it that fucking bad.
Because
you're like that, but with human flesh.
You're a poutine Wendigo.
I'm a poutine Wendigo. That's what I'm trying to
Yes.
say. It's tough, but I think I'm just going to have to own that narrative and add it to my Twitter bio.
Yeah.
So Wendigo psychosis is real.
Yep.
At least it seems to be like real. And there's actual diagnoses. Diagnosis?
Diagnosis.
Diagnosis-y?
I was about to say diagnostics, but that's definitely not right. I don't think.
I mean, I definitely don't think any of the ones I said were. Okay, so the frequency of Wendigo psychosis cases, because there are actual cases, have actually decreased significantly in the 20th century as the Algonquin people came into more contact with European ideologies and a more sedentary and like less rural lifestyle.
Okay. I wonder if that, like, it didn't necessarily stop being diagnosed in its actual form, but the name just changed to something more, like something that was in the British vernacular, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, it still technically existed, but it just started being diagnosed as something different. Like, I wonder if that's maybe what it was, too.
Or maybe it's like in that process even, where Wendigo psychosis is actually just like a form of another mental disorder. I don't want to like give any mental disorders so that like people that actually have them like aren't being accused of also being cannibals. But
Wendigos. Oh my goodness, yeah, no.
yeah.
Well, and that's the other thing, is it could be a mixture of so many things. Like, we have stories and we have records of what people have written about certain events that have happened, but you know, those could be, who knows what details could have been like changed or skewed, not necessarily on purpose, but just through the act of writing them down or remembering them, right? Like, it's so, and just someone writing it down could be remembering it as a certain way just because of their own biases and because of their own beliefs about what's actually going on and happening, right? So it's so interesting to I don't know. I'm always just so curious. Like, I wish I had a time machine so I could go back in time and just actually observe what was happening in that moment.
So Wendigo psychosis was treated by like village shamans, which like the treatment was typically isolation and force feeding fats and basically like imprison them, right? Isolate them to try and like satiate their like crazy hunger, but also to try and make them throw up, to try and induce vomiting, to expel the Wendigo's heart of ice, in quotations, which had to be melted.
Oh.
So their assumption was almost that it was like a curse of some kind, where they had to like force feed fats, make that person like throw up. They would throw up whatever like was causing the Wendigoism, and then like it would melt.
I'm trying to imagine if they were expecting this person to vomit up an actual chunk of ice, and then they would just like, I don't know, throw it in the oven or something to melt it.
Just microwave it.
Yeah, microwave it. Well, I don't know what year this is, but
I think it was quite a while ago. As you may have expected, it did not have a high rate of success. But in a study of about 70 cases, none of them were ostracized completely.
yeah.
And then of the rest of the people, 1 committed suicide, 2 were eaten and killed by other people in that same study. And 15, they just I don't know. They don't know what happened with those 15.
That seems pretty sus. That seems
And
like
only 10 recovered.
so those 10 people signed NDAs basically saying, I won't tell anyone what happened to those 15 people that you experimented on. Conspiracy! Conspiracy is a conspiracy.
The other 33 people that should be left, if numbers are correct, please don't count it because I know they're not right. Of the other 33, they were killed, some of which consented to their own death rather than living out the remainder of their days as a Wendigo. So the other people in the study, aside from the ones that I mentioned, they were just straight up killed at the end of the study.
They were like, nah, kill me now because I might turn into a Wendigo.
Yes.
Before they even really knew if they were going to turn
Yes.
into. Like, I would at least wait. I'd be like, no, wait until I start to go a little bit, you know, just to confirm that I'm going to turn into this monster.
And they wouldn't even do the isolation and, like, force feeding of fats. They just would basically, like, study them and then kill them is what they usually did. So treatment was not usually attempted. Death was usually the first method of employment.
Fuck, man.
And a lot of the people that were put on the trial, a vast majority of them who were treated in that method while they were overwhelmed with the idea and the thought of eating human flesh, had not actually engaged in cannibalism. So none of them had actually eaten people yet.
So they hadn't actually done any crimes or anything. They just had
They
this
just thought
urge.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
That's
in the
very-
end, they were all, like, killed for it.
It's very like Minority Report. Is that movie with Tom Cruise?
Yeah.
Where they like predict that people are going to commit crimes even though they don't actually know if people are going to commit crimes.
When they took a closer look at Wendigo psychosis, it showed that people who were diagnosed generally suffered from all different kinds of mental illnesses, and that the diagnosis of Wendigo psychosis was kind of like a catch-all for any medical or mental issue. So, like, they could have a bunch of different mental disorders or, like, a really severe mental disorder, but they didn't have anything to call it.
Right.
So they called it Wendigo psychosis. But then the only treatment for that was force-feeding you until you threw up to hope that you would get over it or kill you.
Yeah, because to them, any type of what they would see as craziness is, oh, that it's a Wendigo spirit, so we may as well just...
Yeah.
That's fucked, man. Fucked.
And then any time that cannibalism fit with a crime, people always assumed that it was due to Wendigo psychosis rather than it being due to, like, just the overall crime. Maybe the person, like, didn't even want to eat that person, or maybe it was an animal and they just said a person ate them. Like,
yeah.
Anytime that there was any kind of eaten body, basically, they were like, Wendigo psychosis.
Yeah.
An example of this, I have another story. There was a missionary named J.E. Sindon, I don't know how to say that, traveling around in the 1900s, so more recent, and, you know, like, the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
He encountered a woman who supposedly possessed the Wendigo psychosis, but it was rational and had no desire to eat human flesh and only wanted to kill strangers because she was scared that they would hurt her. She surrounded herself with close family and avoided strangers to avoid the temptation to kill them. She was just assumed to have Wendigo psychosis because she wanted to kill strangers. And so she was treating that diagnostic by surrounding herself with loved ones and never really allowing the opportunity to meet a stranger, just in case. Even though she didn't have that craving for cannibal or for flesh, they still, because she had the craving to kill people, they diagnosed her with it.
Yeah, so she obviously just had some kind of, I don't know if psychotic is the right
More like
word for that.
agoraphobic, like...
Well, and if she had some kind of urge to harm people, right? Obviously, right? Unless she had some connection with them.
Yeah, so that's an example of when it was not Wendigo psychosis, right? Or there's pretty clear-cut signs here that she has known mental ailments that could be treated, but they didn't have a name for it or a diagnostic for it, and so they just... It was one of those that got marked as Wendigo psychosis.
Well, hopefully she didn't end up killing anyone or didn't end up getting killed
Well, it
herself.
doesn't sound like it. It sounds like she was, like, treating it in that way. And,
yeah.
And I don't think there's been any reports of her actually killing anyone. So I think she treated it well.
Cuckoo.
Yeah. So get it, girl. Shit.
Control your Wendigo urges.
Bitch. The last kind of thing that I have is just Wendigos in modern media. So this is like Wendigos as we've seen them in culture. Mm-hmm. There's a 1910s short story called The Wendigo by Algernon Blackwood. It was also in some horror fictions such as Stephen King's Pet Sematary and August Darleth's The Thing That Walked in the Wind and Ithaqua, whatever that is. I don't know it. The Marvel comics also had a Wendigo, which was a result of like a curse that afflicted those who committed acts of cannibalism in parts of Canada. And appears in the Incredible Hulk number 162, fighting the Hulk and Wolverine in his first comic book appearance.
So it's like it is like a pop culture thing now too then. I mean, obviously because it's in video games and shit like that, but
it was also in TV shows such as Teen Wolf, Supernatural, Blood Ties, Charmed, and Grimm. But in Supernatural, the Wendigo was handled kind of differently. They had like a hibernation stage and were once human but became a monster, and it would go into like feeding frenzies and then stop to hibernate. And then it's also been in video games. It was in Until Dawn, like you saw, and Until Dawn seems to have done it like the most iconic way that we know Wendigos. It was also in The Legend of Dragoon, The Secret World, Fallout 76, and apparently a bit in the Warcraft series. And it's also in D&D. So that's Wendigos. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, teacher.
You're welcome, Kohai.
My senpai. Thank you for learning me. I don't. That's not a.
Get learned.
I got
Wendigos.
Wendigos. I regret.
It's hard.
I regret saying that.
I every time I say learned, I have regrets, and right? I keep saying it.
Me too.
But like,
because I don't know what else to say, so I'm just like, get learned.
Get knowledged. Eat that fucking knowledge flesh, Wendigo. I'm not high enough for this.
Thanks for listening to the podcast.
Don't you love a man that's okay with human sacrifice?
Thanks for listening to the first episode of Cryptonics. The music in this episode was made by Kevin MacLeod. This song is called Lightless Dawn, and you can find more of his music at the website incompetech.com, incompetech.com. I want to thank our producer Piano for sending me some super great editing notes like a year ago when we first recorded this episode, or close to that, and also our Discord producers. I've listed all of your names in the video description if you're watching on YouTube, or in the podcast notes if you're listening to the audio. And I think that's everything. Thanks very much.